So let's start breaking down some deadlift techniques. Now, remember earlier when I was talking about some people may have a deficit pull off the floor. We might need to alter their stance. We might have to do that. And remember, the only two people who have to pull a deadlift off the floor are powerlifters and Olympic weightlifters. If you're neither of those, we can adjust this around and make it suitable for you. So what I want to look at when he sets up is two major things. What is his lumbar spine doing when he gets down to that bar? And how is he balancing over top of that bar? So if he's setting up where the bar is over the middle of his feet and underneath his shoulder, that's the vertical alignment I'm looking for. And then it's a matter of, does he have to round his lumbar spine to get to the bar or not? So get up ready to the bar. Go in your natural stance. Good. Pause there. We're not even going to lift just yet. So for everyone who's to the side, when you look at his back, does it look relatively square or does it look like it's rounded? Looks pretty flat. I would say that there's a small flexion. There you go. He had a small flexion deviation there, but he was able to correct it out with tension. But in terms of how he's lining up for that, I would say that's okay. So he's already qualified to pull off the floor. That's fine. So where is the bar in relation to his feet and in relation to his shoulders? Vertical, or are his shoulders forward of the bar? Now they're set up, right? So most of the time when people are doing a barbell deadlift, you all right there? You getting a little tight? That's good. That's good. That means he's using the right muscles. So most of the time when somebody gets down to grab the bar and they get into position, if they were to let go of the bar, what would happen? They would fall backwards because they're using that bar as a counterbalance to lift. And as soon as that weight breaks the floor, it's going to shift their center of gravity forward. So if somebody's got the bar too far forward, when they grab the bar and lift off the floor, what's going to happen? Their hips are going to shoot out to try to center them back over here, and they're going to have to pull until they get the bar back over the middle of their feet before they can finally finish that lift. So how many of your clients are really, really slow off the floor when it comes to a lift, but as soon as they get like 2 inches off the floor, boom, it just shoots right out? Yeah. It's all about weight in the front and back. So go down and grab that bar again. Most of the time I want my clients to set up so that the bar is pretty much on their shin before they even think about going down to grab the bar. That way it's back as far as we can get it. And when he's getting set to pull, he's lined up here, he's lined up here, he's lined up here. Everything's lining up the way I would want to see it anatomically based on his size. Next thing, sniff, and then pull. Good. And when he finishes it, it's just finishing tall. You see some people when they finish and they're like, trying to do some sort of back bend, no, you just have to stand tall. A great test that I use with my clients to determine whether or not they're in a vertical alignment is just say, get to a position where you can hold this weight for an hour. Because that means he's in an efficient vertically locked out pose. If he's in a position like this, he's not going to last an hour. Another thing is when he's up like this, turn your neck side to side. Good. He should have relatively good range of motion at lockout. Because that means he's not jamming through his neck. He's also not leaning it forward. He's got full range. He's in a relaxed position. Nice, easy test to be able to determine. Who's got tight hips where deadlifting is a bit of a challenge? Okay, come on up and get you set back down. Thank you. All right, so same thing. I'm going to look at how he sets up, how he lines up, and whether or not he can get to the bar or not. So don't think about pulling, just get down to it. Good. So now what do we see here? He's definitely rounding through his lower back here, and it's not something where I would say, oh my God, the world's going to explode. But where do you think his first movement is going to come from when he tries to lift the weight? It's going to be spinal extension. Try it. Just lift the weight up. What do we see? Spinal extension was one of the first mechanisms aside from plantar flexion out of his ankle. So if the movement is initiated at a spine, he's going to have a sore spine afterwards because it's just like if I do bicep curls, my biceps get sore the day after. If I do nothing but lumbar extensions, my lumbar extensors are going to get a bit sore afterwards. So maybe we can position him in a better way to take advantage of his natural anatomy. Bring the bar back down. Release. And then I want you to open your feet up till your feet are in line with the rings, sort of like bench press width. So not quite that wide, but just a little bit narrower. So we take a bit of a wider stance. This is a modified sumo stance. Now this may work for him or it may not. I don't know just yet. We got to see. So go down and grab the bar on the clear part of the knurling. Good. Chest up. How does that look now? Way better. Way better in terms of his back position. Does that feel okay for you? Yeah. Good. Now pull. Good. Did it stay put? Good. How did that feel for you? A lot better. Did it feel stronger? Did it feel controlled compared to the first pull? What did you feel? A lot better. Lot more control. Great. Bring your feet in just a little bit closer. Sometimes that helps out too. Like sometimes you can go really wide, sometimes not so wide. Typical sumo is like your feet are under the plates. and you're just going to go from here and just 3 or 4 inches lift off the floor and then back down. Again, I'm not training a power lifter in this instance. Maybe he is, I don't know, maybe you're really gifted at powerlifting. But if I'm training an average client and we can get him into a better position where he feels strong, he'll lift more weight, which means he gets more of a training response. So let's see how you set up here. Good, pause there, hang on. So grab the bar, push the knees back, push your knees back, stick your bum out. Good, right there. Now, get your back nice and tight, squeeze your lats, make sure your knees aren't drifting ahead of the bar. So see where you need, there you go, that's it. Now pull the bar back to you. Good, right like that. So see how that creates more tension here and creates more tension through your hips? Hold that tension, breath in, now pull. Good, and when you get to the top, pull your shoulders back just a bit more. So that's where I want you to set up and when you start the pull, right? So here's your relaxed position at the top, there's your relaxed position at the bottom. How does that feel?
Like a lot to think about.
Yes. You're right, it is. Yeah. But did it feel strong, stable, controlled, out of control, weak? What did you feel?
Out of control. It was quite good.
Good. If he's happy, I'm happy. Now, what can we do as far as the stance goes? Can we turn one foot out? Can we turn the other foot out? We can play around with how it feels. So try this. Turn right foot out just a little bit and see what happens. Now again, this is like the optometrist figuring out your prescription. Is this better or is this better? I don't know, I can't tell what he feels or what he sees. I can tell how he lines up based on what I see, but he might say, oh, that felt weird or awkward or junky or painful or anything like that. That's for him to tell. So pull. Good. Back down. Good, so now turn that foot back in to where it was before, now turn the left foot out. Okay, try that one. And he'll know when he gets a good feeling. If it's great, it's like, oh wow, yeah, that's awesome, I love that. So then we just train that way. Good, and back down. Now, can we take a forward back stance? Absolutely, we could do it with the squat. So instead of lining up like this, shift one foot back, no, just like 2 or 3 inches. Or 10 or 20 centimeters, right, Tony?
Right.
Yeah. All right, so line up. They haven't heard the joke yet, though. You stole my joke yesterday, I had to have a new one. Okay, so get tight, now pull from there. Don't drop your hips quite so low in the movement, otherwise it's a squat, right? So push the knees back behind the bar, good, chest up. So this should get tight, good, right like that, perfect, now pull. Good, and back down. So you see, we're playing around and trying to figure out what feels good for him and what feels best. It doesn't have to be a set pattern. And he'll be the one who tells me, I like that one. When I look at him, if he lines up and it's consistent, great, we're going to keep going with it until we find the positioning where he's like, yes, this is where I feel like I'm strong and powerful and comfortable. So what I want you guys to do now is partner up, grab bar and plates, play around with it. If you want, we've got some very light weights with the 2.5 kg bumpers. We've got 10 kg bumpers. We've got 20 kg bumpers. Let's play around with some of the deadlift and coaching on the different patterns. Tony and I will come through and we'll coach you guys up and just break down what we see and how we do.
I'll say this too, there's a few things that I saw that I think would be of benefit to you guys as far as cueing and coaching a deadlift. And again, I think it's up to you as the coach to figure out whether or not conventional stance is a better fit or modified sumo or sumo stance, okay? Regardless of that, the objective is to get the hips as close to the bar as possible, right? And when you say hips close to the bar, what are most people going to interpret that as? It'll be a kind of a squatty setup, right? Because if someone sets up in a conventional stance, well, first of all, when we talk about conventional stance, how are we going to coach that up on people? Like, what is going to be a conventional stance? And I like to say, if I was going to test somebody's vertical jump, that's their power stance, right? So if I were going to test somebody's vertical, like jump up as high as we can, am I going to jump from here? Or am I going to jump from here? Which one? The second one. So that's where I want them to assume their conventional stance is that power stance, okay? Because again, if you set up too wide with a conventional deadlift, what are the knees going to do? Or trap bar deadlift, same thing. They got nowhere to go but in. And we want to avoid that knee valgus on the conventional deadlift, right? So we assume that conventional deadlift. I like to start barbell over midfoot. All right, and you kind of heard me say taking a top-down approach or a bottom-down approach versus a top-down approach. So let's just assume we're going to do the bottoms-up approach. This is what most people do, right? So we go barbell over the floor or barbell over the midfoot, and then we're gonna get down to the bar, but then you heard me say I want to get the hips as close to the bar as possible, right? So which stance are my hips closer? Are they closer here, or are they closer here? Okay? So most people are gonna think they're closer here, but they're actually not, because they're further away laterally, right? Whereas here, the answer is somewhere in the middle of those two, because we can't just say shin's got to be vertical, because it's going to be different for everyone, right? The answer is going to be somewhere in the middle, yes.
So you don't want them actually to be closer to the bar, but to the line, a vertical line of the bar.
Correct, so to speak. And I want armpit to be right over the bar too, because eventually I do want them to pull the bar into them, but their setup's they're not going to do that in the initial setup. So they're going to be barbell over midfoot, they're going to get down to the bar, right? And then what they're going to do is they're going to use the bar as a counterbalance to wedge themselves in there, right? And then from there it's playing around with hip position. Okay, I don't really feel my hamstrings here. I got to pull them, I got to push them back and up, hamstrings galore right here, pull the bar into me, and I'm still using it as a counterbalance. Now where are my armpits in relation to the bar? They're right above it, right? A lot of people are going to be here, right? Where the shoulders are way in front of the barbell, right? And if someone sets up that way, even though the bar is close to them, when they do their initial pull, where's the load going? Into the lower back, right? And after a while, it's going to be weird, right? And it's not going to feel great. So again, if I use the bar as a counterbalance and get my weight back, feel my hamstrings, I get maximal tension laterally. So my hamstrings are firing. Turn my lats on, armpit above bar, and now I go. Lock out. And on the way down, what do I still want to do? Maintain my brace, maintain my lat tension, and get down to the same position, right? So sometimes though, people are going to have, doing a bottoms up approach is going to be problematic for a lot of people. They just, whether it's the ankle restriction, a hip restriction, it's just going to be a little bit weird. So sometimes doing a top-down approach where get rib position, because I see a lot of people too, particularly a lot of the females, when they go into getting down to the bar, they just go here, right? They're getting a lot of motion from their lumbar spine, not from their hip, okay? So again, own rib position, boom, turn lats on, work my way down, and then same wedge position. So I would encourage you as a coach to play around with both to see what version sets up your client for the best success. Another thing that came up was another client was, am I focusing on what's going to be a better stabilizer of the back on a deadlift? Your rhomboids, the muscles in between your shoulder blades, or your lats? Lats. And a lot of people think that, what am I doing on a deadlift? Am I pinching my shoulder blades together? Right? Why would that not be a good idea from a setup point? If I pinch my shoulder blades together, I'm making my arm shorter, right? And it's going to make it kind of harder to get down to the bar, right? And honestly, when we're pulling pretty significant weight, your rhomboids aren't really going to counteract that too much. But my lats, on the other hand, if I turn those guys on, I'm just setting my lats there. Do you see any change in length in my arms? Here, as opposed to here, right? That's why I don't want people to pinch their shoulder blades together, because it makes it harder to get to the bar. And their lats are a better stabilizer of the back regardless, okay? So those are just some, hopefully, cues you guys can take away with you. But I do think you always want to start with bar over midfoot. Make sure they wedge themselves in there, but maximal hamstring tension with armpit right above the bar. That's going to be the money spot for, regardless of limb length, torso, ankle, whatever mobility restriction, whether we're going conventional, whether we're going modified sumo. That's going to be the objective with a lot of your clients. And everyone's going to be different as far as hip position. Some people are going to be a little bit higher, a little bit lower, but what I don't want to see is this. Okay, because again, then it's going to be hips coming up, and the bar's not going to move till the hips get in the proper pull position anyway. So why start lower when you don't have to? Okay. Any other?
Super short.
What was that?
Unless you're like very short here.
Well then, yeah, I mean then of course, if you have somebody who's super and then they have like a ROM of like 4 inches and they're gonna be a little bit closer, they're the ones we hate because their range of motion is crazy short. But I think cueing it that way is gonna fit quite a number of your clients. And again, it's gonna be shoulders over hips, hips over knees. You know, making sure, but that armpit's gotta be right above the bar. Your shoulders are still in front. I'm not saying you have to be behind the bar, but the armpit should be right above the bar because your line of pull is going to be much better there than if you're too far forward. Okay? Any other questions or things that you guys saw or just general questions when it comes to a deadlift?
If you had like say you came up with a guy, I'm imagining you come across this, or you being like, you know, a guy who was more like, you know, like a rounded back lifter, but,
Yep.
but he didn't have any symptoms.
Right.
And then you switched it to what you guys have been teaching today.
Yeah.
Have you noticed any significant change? I mean, was he able to pull a lot heavier, or did
I mean, I'm not really going out of my way. Well, let's put it this way. If I'm dealing with an elite level lifter, because there are advocates of rounded back deadlift. There are really elite lifters out there that deadlift with a rounded back. Biomechanically, it makes sense for some people because you are decreasing the bar path by doing that. But they're also very strong. They've trained themselves out of end ranges of motion of inflection. So, and who am I to tell a 700 pound, 800 pound deadlifter, hey, you're deadlifting wrong. Like, and then they're rounding in the right places, so to speak. So like if you're gonna round anywhere, thoracic spine is where to do it. Like I know there's a video of Eric Cressy deadlifting 600 plus pounds, and all the comments. YouTube is like a cesspool of horrible comments anyways. Like that's like the worst thing ever for comments. But he's like, oh, you're rounding your back. Actually he wasn't. His lumbar spine was locked in. I mean, if you look at a lot of powerlifters, if you look at their erectors, the meat of their erectors are in that thoracic area because they are getting a lot of motion, but that's kind of what they're meant to do. There is more range of motion there. But if I'm dealing with beginner, intermediate, you know, kind of strong guy or female, you know, honestly, I was playing with fire. I'm not going to go out of my way to advocate them rounding their back. And yeah, if it might be a matter of me spending a little bit more time fixing conventional, then maybe I can get that cleaned up in a session or a couple minutes. I don't know. But
would that increase their ability to lift more, you think?
Maybe. I mean, using modified sumo, like me personally, like I've almost exclusively transferred over to modified sumo. I just got, I mean, my best deadlift my best lift it was in conventional. It was 3 times body weight, 570. But after a while, my back was, I've had to overhaul my deadlift technique in the last 2-3 years to the point, because I was a super hard archer, to the point where now I'm locked in, I'm doing more of a modified sumo stance. And it feels a lot better. So I don't have as many back issues anymore, and my deadlift is creeping up on my previous best. So the goal is to hopefully, if not the end of this year, early next year, is to pull 600. That is my goal, and it's going to be done with a modified sumo. It keeps my back in a good position. Not that I was rounding with conventional. Not that I probably couldn't get away with it now if I just went back to it, but. You know, when I'm dealing with an individual, I just want to set them up for the best success. And you know, if they're rounding, I mean, to me, that's just playing with fire. Like, maybe they might get away with it. Who knows? I mean, there's plenty of people who have had. I mean, was it Weasel Diesel from like 8 or some odd years ago, who was like notorious for having these really crazy videos of doing horrible form and never hurt himself. You know, some people can get away with doing stupid stuff, but you know, exactly. Like I don't want to risk it. I mean, if my livelihood is to not allow people to get hurt, you know, I'm going to try my best to try to clean it up. And if I can do a modified sumo stance, then I don't get demerit points as a coach because I don't have all my clients conventional deadlift. I know unfortunately there's some coaches out there who, if you don't conventional deadlift every single client, then you're a fail as a coach, and I'm just like, that's missing the point, dude. Like, I mean, come on. If you're that close-minded and that narrow-minded, my objective is to set people up for success and have them feel good and build some confidence, and then maybe have them conventional deadlift, cool. But again, I don't want to play with fire. So.